And how did you end up here as the general manager of the Bentley dealership?
Well, so long story. I had a very, very good friend of mine who invited me to dinner one evening, and we were talking about making some changes in our businesses. And I decided I was going to make a change from what I was doing to possibly go to another company. And I interviewed with the Asbury Automotive Group. They told me they had an opportunity with the Bentley dealership. I found that pretty intriguing. And once I reviewed the financial statements, looked at all the numbers, I said, you never want to enter a business that's already at its peak. You want to enter a business that has room to grow, room that you can develop it into what you know it can be. And I decided to take the leap almost 6 years ago. And we took this dealership from being not really a contender in the Bentley market to now being ranked #1 in the Americas and #2 globally.
There's definitely a word in that lesson. I've heard several leaders say that don't be afraid to take on a challenge and sort of earn your wares from turning that challenge into a triumph. So you sort of echo that same sentiment. So explain the day in the life of Sid Barron.
It's like all of us, like you, like all of us. I get up, I go to bed pretty early, and I get up really early. My day starts off with, getting some fresh air, taking the dog out for a walk, looking at my Peloton bike before I hop on it. Unfortunately, it's been sitting idle for a little while. We're redoing our exercise area at the house. And then I try to make it to work genuinely before my other staff gets in. It's amazing how the quiet time before everyone comes in, you can really reflect on your prior day, reflect on the day coming up, and get your game plan started. Because to me, a work day is literally like playing a game every single day. If you don't have a huddle and a game plan set up for the day, you've got to have your day planned. And once you have it planned out and your team sees that you are ahead of the game and ahead of them, things work very, very easily for you.
I got to get your Peloton info so I can send you a couple text messages and harass you about your Peloton. You can do the same for me. So as a younger person, did you know you wanted to be in the automotive industry?
No, Kevin, I tell you, that you talk about something that just happened totally, serendipitous. I was on the way to Emory one day, on the way to campus, and had a class that got canceled, so I had some time to kill. And you know where Scott Boulevard is in relationship to the Emory campus. And that, back in the day was kind of the car strip or the car row. So just to kill some time, I stopped into a dealership, and I was curious, how the whole process worked. I'd always loved cars my whole life. The guys would tell me about how it worked, what you did, how the process worked. I talked to a few of the guys there. And before I left, one of the managers came up and offered me a job. I said, I'm not selling cars. I said, what are you talking about? I said, I go to Emory. I'm not going to sell cars for a living. But it kind of intrigued me. And I did a little bit of research. And, after a lot of thought and having my parents pretty upset, I decided to give it a shot and hadn't looked back. I mean, it's just been a phenomenal career.
That's interesting. What do you think the guy saw in you that made him offer you a job that day?
It's strange, and I don't know, because I think back on it, and ironically, now you talk about an irony, one of the guys that hired me works at a Volkswagen dealership that we now own.
Wow.
So he works in the building behind me. But I think, what they saw is what I look for in prospective employees. I want somebody who's fresh. You're not jaded with the business. You're creative. You have some innovative ideas. You want to think about not how it's been done, but how I'm going to do it. Because just because something's been done the same way over and over and over again doesn't mean that's the only way or the best way. Think about Jeff Bezos. 27 years ago, when Jeff Bezos says, "Look, I'm going to sell books online," and people are looking at him like, "Are you crazy? Just go to the bookstore." He says, "No, I think there's a new way to do it." And so now he's only the wealthiest man on the planet. He's got a company that's worth $1.6 trillion because he didn't do anything that hadn't been done before, he did it differently and did it better.
So it sounds like you're sort of attracted to like a innovative thinker, innovative mind. Are there any other characteristics other than just innovation that you look for in someone that you want to promote to lead, not just be a part of the team, but to lead the team?
You know, you can tell pretty quickly a person's integrity and a person's culture. And the one thing that, you know, I'm a very patient, as you know, we work together a lot. I'm a very patient, I'm a very quiet person a lot of times, but the one thing I have zero tolerance for is someone that has no integrity. And the one thing that I look for is, yeah, I want you to be innovative. I want you to think out of the box. I want you to do things differently. But as you're doing all of that, you've got to maintain a spotless record of integrity with me. Truth is what matters regardless of anything else. And, you know, come to work to work. Don't come to work to cause controversy. Don't come to work to tell me why it's not going to happen. You know, if you come in with a good attitude, I can teach you everything else. But truth among everything else has got to be spotless, great attitude. And you know what? We can learn everything else.
Yeah, one of the things that I learned as a young lawyer, and I attribute it to the partner and sponsor that helped me become a partner. He would always say, Kevin, put your can-do hat on. He said, people don't pay you the big bucks to tell them what they can't do. Figure it out and put your can-do hat on. And so come to work, come to figure it out, and you know, roll up your sleeves and get to yes if you can.
You know, and that's one thing I tell my staff. You know, when they tell me they can't do something, I say, no, you can't do it. But don't let me find somebody else who can, because don't tell me it can't be done. You know, just because you say it can't be done means you can't do it. You know, because what I try to impress on them, I'm sure you do the exact same thing, is I'll never ask any of my staff to do something that I won't do or something that I can't do. Mm-hmm. And when they see me lead that example, then naturally, you know, it just follows after that.
And I think that ties back to an earlier point where that's how you create innovative thinking, right? When you bump your head into a wall, right, you know, you can stop and stare at the wall, or you can figure out a way to go under it, beside it, around it, over it, but you got to figure out a way to get through it.
Yeah, exactly correct. Yeah, don't say it won't work. It won't work for you, but it's gonna work for somebody.
So you mentioned earlier, we mentioned in your bio that you got started working with Hank Aaron at Hank Aaron BMW. How did that come about, or how did that happen?
So again, that was one of those, you know, phone calls that you hear about it, but you never expect to get. I was literally at home one day. Now, bear in mind, when I got the phone call, I was selling cars to make a living. I was a salesperson. And I get a call from Hank Aaron's attorney's office, and they said, look, Mr. Aaron has just been awarded a new dealership on the south side of town. I knew about it because I worked for BMW at the time. And he said that they'd like to speak with me about being the general manager. Well, naturally, I assumed it was one of my friends playing a prank on me. Mm-hmm. So I hung the phone up. Then I thought about it. I said, you know, maybe that was a real call. So, you know, back then, of course, we didn't have all the fancy caller ID and everything else, but I was able to get the number and call back, and it was an attorney's office. And I met with Mr. Aaron at the stadium, and we had a great conversation. And, you know, he said to me, he goes, Sid, you know, if I make this decision for you to join my team, I'd like you to be my general manager. And it goes back to what I said a moment ago. I said, Mr. Aaron, I said, you know, I've never been a general manager. I don't think I can do that job yet. He looked at me, he said, you'll learn. And again, I think he saw that, you know, I had the capacity of doing something. And it goes back to probably, well, to me, his most famous quote, when he says that, you know, a man's ability is only limited by their lack of opportunity. So if you don't have the opportunity to do something more, then you're only going to do what you're doing currently. So he gave me that opportunity to become the general manager. But then the job really got tough because unbeknownst to me, nothing had been done. He literally, once we came to an agreement on a contract, he had a rolled up set of plans for the dealership and said, here are the plans, this is the real estate, let's get to work. I'm like, Mr. Aaron, I've never built a dealership. I've never built a house. But long story short, you know what? We figured it out. We broke ground. We had nothing but dirt and trees. June of 1999. December 3rd of 1999, that same year, we opened for business. So you know what? We made it happen.
He said, put your can-do hat on and you figured
Man,
it out.
he said, he goes, look, I hired you, so we got to figure this job out.
So like, in addition, everyone knows Mr. Aaron as the home run king, but in addition to that, he was a heck of a businessman with Popeyes and Krispy Kremes and the automotive industry and other business ventures. But he and his wife were incredible humanitarians as well. Many don't know that they played a role in the first Mayor's Ball, which has now raised tens of billions of dollars
Sure.
for college students, and done a bunch of other charitable things, supporting Morehouse School of Medicine, the Chasing the Dream Foundation. What was it like just working with him and being around him and his wife, Billy?
You know, it was amazing to see two people who had a common goal and a common vision. And that goes back into, you know, how I lead and how I like to manage. If my staff doesn't align, their vision doesn't align with my vision, then we're not going to end up at the same point. And one thing I saw with the Aarons is Mr. and Mrs. Aaron had exactly the same vision. You know, they valued education more than anything because they realized that without an education, our young people are not going to go very far. Mrs. Aaron really concentrated on young ladies because, you know, as we all see, an uneducated young woman in today's world is at the victim of everybody. So they must be educated. But to be around them was interesting because they were so giving. They had the resources. They shared their resources tremendously. As you know, the amount of checks they wrote to everything they touched was quite amazing. And to be around them and to see the people who gravitated towards them. I would be at their house. I remember this vividly as yesterday when actually Ambassador Young wanted to raise some money to help one of the colleges. And Mrs. Aaron said, Sid, come by the house for dinner. We're going to talk to Ambassador Young. They call him Andy, of course. And let's get some ideas going on how we can raise some money for this school. Well, I showed up at the house for dinner, and you never know who's going to be at their home. But I was just reflecting back, thinking I'm sitting there eating Popeye's chicken with Hank Aaron and Andrew Young. You know, how many people would have that opportunity? But to hear how, you know, they were simple in that perspective, but what they were planning on would have been so earth-shattering to these young people and these students with what they've given them with the resources, and that happened over 15 years ago. So it was quite amazing to see that they never ever strayed from their mission. They were so encouraging with everything that we did. Mrs. Aaron's son-in-law, one of their son-in-laws, ran their restaurant group, and to see how they nurtured his growth in that business, how they nurtured me in the automotive business, and they, you know, Mr. Aaron was a baseball player all his life, but what he saw was he could tell someone's character inside of just a few seconds. Mrs. Aaron, a very educated person, you know, on-air personality in Atlanta, same thing. They could tell your character and your personality within a matter of just a few minutes, and they knew if you were the person they wanted around them. If you weren't that kind of person, and I've seen it happen, you were dismissed pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Mr. Aaron, you know, did his best to be the most generous and genuine person he could. But I've been around him when you didn't want to be around him, when you had people come up with a bunch of nonsense, but he was able to dismiss them pretty quickly.
So you mentioned the importance of opportunity for people to grow. You mentioned the importance of their aligned vision. Were there any other lessons that you learned from them in your time that you spent around them?
You know, Mr. Aaron would always tell us, when I say us, all the managers in the dealership, myself as well as my staff, he said, guys, whatever you do today, just remember you're paving a path for somebody behind you. So don't be selfish in your knowledge. Don't be selfish in your skill. Don't be selfish in your resources. He said, always share what you have now because you don't want it to stop with you. You know, it goes back almost to what Vice President Harris said when her mother told her, said, look, you're going to be the first, but don't be the last. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Aaron was very, very, very much the same way. He said, everything that you've learned, everything that you know, please share it and get that person that needs that hand up, that needs that opportunity that wouldn't be presented to them normally, help them get to where you are. Because when they replace you, guess what? You're going higher. Mm-hmm. And that was his goal.
Okay. Well, of course, we recently lost him. So my heart goes out to you and his wife and the whole family. And of course, it was a major loss for our community. But what I really hope is that folks recognize he was way bigger than the home run team. And his legacy is tied to folks like you, folks that came after you, folks that ran the restaurant business, folks that he gave an opportunity to, and folks that he helped get through college. And so his legacy is way bigger than baseball. And I want to make sure folks recognize that and appreciate that.
You know, Kevin, it's amazing you mentioned that. You know, I knew Mr. Aaron for 22 years, and I can tell you the times that he and I talked about baseball on one hand. It just wasn't a topic. You know, we talked about life, we talked about business, we talked about fishing, we talked about, you know, where we were going to eat lunch, but we never talked about baseball because that was part of his life, but it was put on a shelf. And then he figured after baseball, you know what, I'm going to improve the level of opportunities for young people, and I'm going to run my businesses. So he would chat about it if it came up, but it was not a priority for him at all after baseball.
And I mean, you know, that's the tale of a true leader, to pave the path for those coming behind, the lesson that he taught you. Were there any other mentors in your life that helped pave the way for you?
So in 1998, the president of BMW at the time was a fellow by the name of Vic Doolan. Vic Doolan was South African. He lived through apartheid in South Africa. And when Vic became president of BMW, he had a mission to put in place at least 10 African-American BMW owners. In 1998, there was not a single, out of 320 roughly dealerships, there was not a single Black-owned BMW dealership. Mr. Aaron, of course, being the first. Wow. The second was a gentleman by the name of Tom Moorhead. And Tom actually spoke at Mr. Aaron's funeral. Tom lived in Virginia, and he was able to open Sterling BMW, which was the second Black-owned BMW dealership in the U.S. And Tom recently retired, divested, sold all of his dealerships. But Tom and I became very, very, very close friends because when we opened our dealership, Tom would come down and visit us during the construction, during the opening phases, to kind of have a blueprint on how to do his dealership. He had been a General Motors dealer, but never been a luxury dealer before. And what happened during that time was he and I became very good friends, and he and the Aarons became very close friends. His wife, Mrs. Aaron, became good friends, and Tom and Mr. Aaron became very good friends. So, and Tom has been a mentor of mine since that time as well. And Tom is now retired, recently sold his businesses for a staggering amount of money. He was also, so he was interesting too, because again, he was not the first in his category. He was also the very first African-American Rolls-Royce dealer, again in Sterling, Virginia. So Tom retired with BMW, Mini, Rolls-Royce, Lamborghini, McLaren, and Harley Davidson.
Wow.
He sold his group back in November. He and his wife decided to retire down in South Florida.
Wow. I always like to ask this question around mentoring. How did you get the most out of those relationships that you had with Mr. Aaron and Tom?
Two things: conversations, candid conversation with both of them, and introductions. You know, it would be amazing. We would be at a conference or at a meeting or just at a dinner, and Tom Moorhead or Mr. Aaron would say, "Sid, there's somebody I want you to meet." And they would always pick out people who they knew might not be someone that would elevate my career at that moment, but somebody I could put in my pocket that when the time came to call that person, I would have that person. It could have been an attorney. It could have been someone who owned a cleaning service. It could have been a prospective new client. But they always picked out somebody who would be an influential part of my life moving forward that could really elevate what I was doing and what our business was doing.
Okay, that's good tips. So of course we're in this pandemic, right? And so in this pandemic environment, which we've seen just devastate a lot of businesses and society as a whole, a lot of lives lost. What are some of the biggest obstacles that you had to manage through as a leader of a luxury sales organization in the automotive space? And how did you sort of navigate those obstacles?
Well, you know, first and foremost is safety, and keep in mind my staff healthy and the clients healthy. So that's been the biggest challenge because, as the pandemic initially started to spread, no one really took it as seriously as they should have. And, so my biggest challenge was to keep everyone focused, keep everyone say, look, guys, let's trust the science. You know, get off the internet, get off of, whatever you're looking at, trust the science. The science is this is a, biological dilemma that we're living through, and we got to protect ourselves. So, the simple thing is just getting masks. So got everybody wearing masks, got everybody doing the right things. And ironically, went from being the exception to being a habit. I would see my staff members walk inside the building and immediately do what is necessary. Wear their masks, make sure they're doing things that are proper. Clients also have been very respectful. We put signs up. We reduced our hours. We to prepare for the potential downside of the business. We did have to furlough a few staff members. So we learned a lot of multitasking, which has been tremendous for us, and it's taught a lot of the staff members new skills. And one thing I try to teach people also from a mentorship perspective is make yourself as valuable as you can to your company. And when it comes time for them to downsize, they say, wait a minute, this person has these skills. They're more valuable to me than this person. So make yourself that person that's really valuable to your company. But overall, we've only had one case of a team member to come down with COVID. He recovered perfectly fine, no issues at all. But everybody stayed very, very safe, and it's been challenging. But it's not the new normal; it is normal now. So we have to just live through it and do the best we can.
So we hope at some point this is over with. Are there any sort of lessons or things that you adapted or adopted during the pandemic that you think will outlast the pandemic?
Yes, I think two things that from a business perspective, what we've all had to learn. So our group has roughly 91 dealerships, and what all of us as managing partners and general managers have had to do is to take a strong look at your financial statement, take a strong look at your staff, and not to make it sound as simple as this, but where can you cut the fat? And once we see that we can do more with less resources, more with less people, it's made us more efficient, but I think it's made the staff more energetic. It's made them more willing to come to work knowing that, I've got a full workday because I'm not doing my job. I'm doing my job plus a percentage of this other job. So it's taught us to be more efficient in what we do and to really be better stewards of our resources and work in a much more efficient manner. And it's been reflected tremendously. We had our earnings call yesterday with the FTC, and it's amazing. Our business, even though we were in a horrible situation with the pandemic last year, we had a phenomenal year financially because we learned to work in a much more efficient and effective manner. We learned to reduce expenses. We learned to keep revenues where they were. And we just work better.
That's good stuff. But let's take a step back and take another look at sort of your career. What are some of the biggest obstacles that you've had to overcome in your own career, whether they be personal or professional?
Kevin, from a professional standpoint, the automotive industry for a number of years was really it was a closed circle. And if you weren't a part of that inner circle, your opportunities were very, very limited. The Southeast is probably one of the biggest automotive markets in the nation, if not in the whole world. But if you were a salesperson, a lot of times that was going to be your be all to end all. That's the reason this business had so much attrition. You would see guys that would come in and they would literally say, look, I'm going to sell cars till I get a real job, not knowing that it could be a career if they had the opportunity to move up. And thankfully, I was in that space where I could move up. But the biggest challenge was if I had not met a Hank Aaron, I can't tell you that I would still be in the business today. Mm-hmm. If I had not met a Tom Moorhead, if I had not met people to put me in positions greater than I was in, because I did what I did very, very well. I sold cars for 10 years, had a great client base, made a very good living, But it was almost like when you get to the point to where you know what's going to happen tomorrow, it makes today very, very boring. But at least, I had these people put me in positions that were able to elevate my career and my career path. That was the biggest challenge. Again, if I had not met a Hank Aaron 22 years ago, I promise you, you and I probably would not be having a conversation right now.
Anything on the personal side that you've had to overcome in your career?
On a personal side, I really can't say that I've had that many obstacles. I have an amazingly supportive wife. We've been married for 33 years. My parents were phenomenally supportive. Well, my mother, very, very supportive, naturally, as my mother was Latino, and Latin mothers always want their sons to either be priests or doctors, which I was neither, of course. But she loved what I did as a career because she saw how much I enjoyed it. So from a personal standpoint, I mean, I've been very, very, very lucky. I've had support from my family, support from my friends. So it's made my journey not easy, but easier than it could have been.
I chuckled a little bit earlier because you graduated from Emory at 19 and you tell your parents you want to sell cars. I was watching that episode of the Cosby Show when Sandra and Elvin wanted to open up the Wilderness store.
Exactly.
My mom was like, "Pay me all of my money now."
Exactly. Well, yeah, my parents. It was an interesting conversation. My father was like, he's like, well, you've always enjoyed cars, so hey, take an extra shirt to work with you. You're going to sweat a lot, but enjoy yourself. And my mother was she was just flabbergasted. She didn't know what to say. But after they saw the success that I had, they were both very proud of what I was doing.
Talk a little bit more about leadership. So we know that leading is you're out front. There is no cover. You got to take all the arrows and all the shots, and it's risky, and it's a willingness to fail publicly. And when you have success, you got to be willing to share it with everybody else. You can't take all of it. So it's a tough place to be, right? So what motivates you to deal with the daily grind of being a leader?
I tell you that's an interesting question. And one thing that I enjoy probably more than anything is, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. You never, when you think you've heard it all from either a team member or from a client, something comes up and you're like, where did that come from? And one thing that my wife she always laughs when I give her these stories at work, and she just thinks it's just so unbelievable. But things happen that just you don't understand where they came from. But I tell you what I enjoy the most, probably more than anything, is when I see a team member that I can help assist and elevate into a position and they're successful. I've got a young man who actually worked for me years ago at Lexus, and we had a position in our company available as a general manager at a store we have over at Stonecrest Mall. And I really lobbied for him to take the position. I really, talked to our executives. We got him in the chair. He's been doing a great job there. And I was so proud. It was either 2 years, maybe 3 years ago. Every year we have an annual general managers conference, and he was recognized for leading that store to a position that it's never seen financially. And it was to the point to where, our CEO even granted him a stock award because he did such an amazing job. And when you see things like that happen to people that, you help mentor and you convince them that they could do it, I mean, nothing makes you feel better.
That's awesome. So what is your philosophy on leadership? Some people are focused on numbers. Some people are focused on building people. Some people are focused on the succession plan. Like, what is your philosophy on leadership?
So, really, really good question. And, it's funny, I was taking some notes this morning when I was looking at your questions. And this may sound funny to you, but I think the biggest leadership direction I've ever got was from watching a Spike Lee movie. So and we all know the movie real well, Do the Right Thing. You know what, when you do the right thing, it's amazing how everything else falls in place. If you go into a business, it's been my experience, you go into a business and you are focused simply on the bottom line, the financial statements, the numbers, which they're ultimately important. But if you focus on that as your primary objective, you know what? You may get there, but you may get there by really stepping over a lot of people. When you focus on developing your team members, but sincerely developing your team members, showing a true concern for them, let them know that, you know what, our culture is a culture of being inclusive. We want you to be a part of our success because everybody, I don't care if you push a broom or if you write the checks every day, everybody's integral to our success. It's got to be a culture of being inclusive, a culture of having fun, of really enjoying, being around your team members. We've got to be able to give our clients a supreme experience. Let them know that we are going to be, even with our company, with Asbury, we want to make sure that we are the most guest-centric automotive company in the world. Because without our guests, we don't call them customers, without our guests, we don't have a business. So we want to be the most guest-centric automotive company in the world. We have our team members that we want to have fun with, generate a great culture. And we have shareholders that we have a responsibility to. So we want our shareholders to know that, you know what, we are amazing stewards of their resources. Because when you work for a public company, when you work for a private capitalized company, someone is writing checks and they're giving you the authority to make decisions. But you've got to be a good steward of what you've been given. And when those things fall into place, guess what? Your financial statement will show.
And I sense a common theme. I like to ask every leader sort of what's their North Star as a leader. And I've heard integrity multiple times from you. So I presume that's going to be your North Star, is in leading with integrity.
Without question. One thing, a very, very big factor that Mr. Aaron would always impress upon all of us, and it was ironic, he was at the dealership literally almost every day. But he said, guys, no matter what you do, no matter what you promise a customer, no matter what you promise one of your employees, do what you say you're going to do. It may hurt. It may be something that may put you a little bit backwards financially, but your word is all you've got that you can take with you. Here's an amazing man that, we laid to rest last week, but when he's in that casket, he's in there by himself. There's nothing else with him. But what is he taking with him? His integrity, his professionalism, his word, his honesty. So that is my North Star. I have no tolerance for somebody who cannot look at you in the face, tell you the truth. And you know what? As they say, sometimes the truth hurts, but that's okay. Tell me the truth and we'll work around it. But if you try to lie, try to cover things up, that makes it so much worse that I have no tolerance for that.
Tell us about one or two of your major successes.
So I would say two of my major successes is when we opened the BMW dealership. That had never been done before. It had been 10 years before a BMW dealership was open anywhere in the United States. So we opened the first one in 10 years. So the day we opened in December of 1999, it was unbelievable. And then fast forward 5 years forward, in 2004, we were awarded the Black Enterprise Dealer of the Year. And it's amazing. So Mr. Aaron, naturally, he was a dealer. I was a general manager. He received just a phenomenal award from Tiffany's and from Black Enterprise. When he came back to the table, we were at a big conference, a big convention for Black Enterprise. He walked over to me and he gave me the award. He goes, "Sid, this is yours," and I still have it. So those two things were probably the biggest achievements that I've accomplished so far.
So can we go back to the Black Enterprise magazine and see Sid with a big afro or something in there?
No, I had hair. I didn't have all this glare on top of my head. I did have some hair, not an afro. I got to go back to high school for that.
So what about an experience that you wish you had back, or you could do it over again?
So yeah, I've got one. I got a big one. So we got a Jaguar and Land Rover dealership awarded to us in Augusta, Georgia. Augusta's a great community. This is a brand new dealership. Never had a dealership there before. And we decided we were going to go in, we were going to shake up the city. We were going to build this beautiful mausoleum, this beautiful facility. And we did. I mean, we were on a huge amount of property. We built a dealership that should have been in Los Angeles, not in Augusta, Georgia. So it was a lesson learned. We overbuilt it. We were overly aggressive on what we thought we could do. Thankfully, when we decided to sell the dealership, we sold it. We didn't lose one penny. We didn't make any money, but we didn't lose any money. But that was a lesson learned, that bigger isn't always better. And sometimes you got to kind of just just not try to be out there as much. If we had gone in a little bit smaller scale, did a little more modestly, I think it would have been better. But it was a good lesson learned.
So I always like to ask these questions for the future leaders, because we know that some of the challenging components of leadership are dealing with difficult conversations and dealing with sort of underperformers or difficult people. How do you manage those difficult conversations, and how do you light a fire under someone that's underperforming?
So, difficult conversations that you have to have with your employees, you have to, and it's tough, but you have to separate the personal from the factual, because someone can give you all the reasons why something happened the wrong way, and because you are thinking about that person in a personal perspective, you're not really listening to the actual reasons of what happened and how it happened. So you have to have those hard conversations. It's you know what? It's very similar to how a parent talks to a child. No one loves their children more than their parents. But there are times when you have to have those corrective conversations, and you have to say, okay, I'm your buddy, I'm your pal, but right now I'm your father. And this is a conversation we have to have. The way you light the fire, the way I try to light the fire under some of my staff members too, is show them that you're willing to do what you're asking them to do. Mm-hmm. Show them that what you are doing, if they have the inclination to be a general manager, is where you want them to grow. And when you show them that you have sincere concern about their career moving forward, you don't care about what happened in the past. What's happened has happened. We can't change it. But you want them to make adjustments, improve their performance to where they can do more than what they're doing to benefit themselves and their family. And I think that, more so than the threats, the screaming, the throwing stuff, that really has more impact when you say, look, I'm concerned about you. I want you to grow, but doing what you're doing today isn't going to get us there. Let me show you another path. And sometimes that's all it takes. Just show them another path to get there.
So when you think back sort of on the life you've led and some of your accomplishments thus far, when were you first thrust into a leadership position?
Probably, Kevin, probably even in my family. I'm not the oldest. I'm next to the oldest, but I was always, the person who make all the decisions. I'm one of five, and I have one older sister, two younger sisters, one younger brother. So I was kind of thrust into that position then. My parents worked a lot. My mother worked the 11 to 7 shift at Crawford Lawn Hospital. My father worked a day shift, of course. So I was with my siblings more than my parents were. But I was really the one to kind of keep everything together. And even today, even my wife says, why aren't they calling you when they have their problems? Well, that's what they've always been used to. So that was kind of my first leadership role. And then at my very first job, I went to work at a very small little restaurant, and I was 16 years old. And the owner put me in a position as the manager, and I was managing people who were twice my age. So I was kind of pushing to that with no training whatsoever. So that was kind of a trial by fire. But I would say those were my first two leadership roles.
And has it followed you along the way? Like, have you just been a serial leader where you look up and most circumstances you're in, you're the person that people come to and you're sort of leading across your life journey?
It's funny. With COVID, of course, we can't do anything in person. So we were having our HOA meeting last night for our community via a Zoom meeting. And it came down to voting for the officer for the board for next year. The first thing I did was my sister texted me, "Are you running for the board?" I'm like, "No, I'm not running for the board. I don't have time for that." But yes, it has followed me quite a bit. And you know what? And I don't mind it, because what it means that is that at least, I lead myself in a manner that hopefully I'm an example to people. Mm-hmm. And they say, you know what? If nothing more, Sid wouldn't do that if some nonsense is going on, or I'd rather do it the way Sid would do it. And to me, that brings me more joy than anything else.
So if you're talking to some of our collegiate 100 students, what advice would you give them on leadership?
You know, the advice I would give them is don't be good. You know, to me, good is probably the biggest enemy to being great. When you say that I'm good at something, okay, you want to be great at something. So, what I would tell them is whatever endeavor they look at doing, and I don't care if it's something menial, something that's, they're going to be a brain surgeon, whatever they're going to do, don't be good, be great at it. And how do you get great? You get great by educating yourself, by exposing yourself to other ways of doing things, by reading. That's one thing that my wife always, she doesn't complain, but she always kind of jabs me. She says, "Why don't you ever read any books?" I said, "I do read books." She goes, "No, those business books aren't books." I said, "Those are books." But be great. Don't just be good.
Would that change at all if you were talking to maybe someone in the emerging that had already began their career and a couple years in, and now they're thinking about taking on a leadership role? What advice would you give them as they embark on their leadership journey?
Kevin, one thing that I would do for them is one thing I've seen you do as well, is I would tell them to pick out the person in their career, in their mind, that does it the best possible. Use that person as a blueprint. Don't try to reinvent anything. Use that person as a blueprint. When you look at people who are in the law field, you've got a handful of guys. You say, you know what? That's the guy. Mm-hmm. And you want to look at what they're doing and figure out a way that you can get to that same level, and then see what they're doing and how can you even make it better. And that's one way that they can truly elevate their career and go to the next level.
So if someone said they wanted to be the next Sid Barron, what would you tell her or him to do to start that trajectory and prepare for that road ahead?
I would tell them, number one is to don't go into a different path by fear. Take a different path because it's out there. You never know where it's going to lead to. Whatever you do, be the best at what you're going to do. Always enter everything with full knowledge of what the situation is. There is no get rich quick scheme. There is no easy way around being a consummate professional. There's no easy way of doing anything that will give you long-term satisfaction. So be willing to put in the work. And if the work means getting up at 4 a.m., get up at 4 a.m. We can all sleep, when we're old. But do what's necessary today to lay a path for what's going to happen decades from now.
Are there any books that you've read along the way that have sort of helped guide you or prepare you for the journey that you've been on?
So it's funny, when I was looking at your questions earlier, I pulled 3 books that I have right here in my office. One is called The Dream Manager by Matthew Kelly. Phenomenal book. And it's got a line in here that says, dreams are invisible but powerful. You can't see them, but they keep everything going. Mm-hmm. So, you have to visualize and be able to see a direction that you can take your life in, and don't forget about that. Another book that I've read that is also just an incredible book it's called It's Your Ship. So this is written by a Navy admiral that looks at leadership from a military perspective. The military being very regimented, but having a distinct set of rules to get you to an end result. And in the military, if you don't follow these rules, it could mean life and death. So this takes leadership and management into a whole nother arena. And then the last book that I think a lot of people have read, and it's amazing because it tells you how some companies have grown, some have not, but good to great. Really good book, really quick read. And it just shows you how companies that have decided to innovate and to move forward have done amazingly well. And the ones that say, no, we're doing okay, well, guess what? Okay puts them out of business. I've always been a photography buff, and I think back of a company like Kodak. Who would have thought 20 years ago Kodak would be out of business? Who would have thought Blockbuster would be out of business? These are companies that decided to lay back and keep doing things the way they've always done them. But guess what? What you're always doing is going to run out. So you got to stay one step ahead of the game.
Yeah, I work for Wolf Camera, so there
you go.
That's it.
That's it.
So So you've lived a rich and colorful life with a lot of great experiences. What's been the most awe-inspiring moment that you've had as a leader? One where you're just like, wow, that was awesome.
you know, probably, one of the things that really, and it's amazing that I've been in this career for so long. It happened recently when I got a call from. Actually, no, I didn't get a call. I was on a Zoom meeting. We were having our national dealer conference with Bentley Americas 2 weeks ago, and I'm on the call. The panelists were the president of Bentley, the vice president of Bentley, head of marketing, head of after sales, panel of about 5 guys. And I get called out on the meeting by the vice president of Bentley. And his name is Mike Rocco. Mike said, he goes, and I'd like to congratulate Sid Barron and his team at Bentley Atlanta for being #1 in the Americas and #2 globally. Now, here's the guy that never talks about, well, naturally to be politically correct, they never want to call out a dealership or a name, but Mike actually did. He says, look, I don't know what to tell you guys, but you are right now ranked #1 in all in the Americas for them is North and South America and Latin America, and #2 globally. And then I'm thinking to myself, man, how do I get to #1 globally? I mean, that's my next goal. As I said, #2 is great, #2 is good, but #1 is great. So that was really it caught me by surprise. And it was a quiet moment sitting in my office at home on this webinar, and it was quite exciting.
And to circle back to show how amazing that is, you said you took this role because it was a challenge and because there was room to improve it.
Absolutely.
And so that shows that arc.
Absolutely.
So what would you like your legacy to be as a leader and as a person?
Kevin, I want people to be able to say who have worked for me was, Sid did what was right. He did what was right for us as employees, what was right for the customers. He never embarrassed his parents. He was a great father, husband, brother, uncle. I don't want to be known as somebody, who, he had the most stuff when he died. He had the most money in the bank. I just want to be known that I was a good person. I did inspire people to do more than what they're currently doing, and to help elevate, their lives, and look at the person that there's always somebody who is doing worse than we are. Let's get that person doing as well as we are. Don't just walk past them. And so that's always been my goal.
Well, you're well on your way, sir, because I've got to work with you, and you live it, you walk it like you talk it. So you are well on your way there. I'm going to do something different this time. I haven't done this before, but before I close, I want to ask you, is there a quote that drives you or that you come back to whenever you need motivation? And I'll give you a little bit of time to think on that. One that I often come back to and often share is that success is leased, not owned, and rent is due every single day.
Absolutely.
And I share that with the young people that I talk to, and I think about that when I need a little motivation. Is there something that sticks out in your mind that you would like to share with the people that are listening today before we close out?
Well, I have to go back to the quote that Mr. Aaron made, which that to me is very, very impactful, and it really says a lot about this conversation, which is a man's ability is only limited by his lack of opportunity. Mm-hmm. You know what? Give me the opportunity to do it, and and I'll do everything I can not to fail and to be the best at it. But that's the only thing. I mean, we're just limited by our lack of opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we're here for with the 100, to try to make sure that our young people in the communities that we serve get their shot. They get the call up and the ability to prove their wares.
Sure.
And I know I'm convinced, and I'm sure you are too, that some of the young people that we work with, the things that they've been through, the life experiences, the grit that they've demonstrated, if you just give them a shot, the world is theirs. But we just got to make sure they get that shot.
So these kids that we mentor, you're exactly correct. They have not been exposed to opportunities that can prove their worth. And these are as you and I have seen, very, very intelligent young people that have so much they can offer, but a lot of times they get on the wrong path and that potential gets wasted. And, it's our goal not to have that, because to me, nothing is worse than wasted potential. When you see these young people that have so much to offer people, but if they're not put in the right positions to grow, then it's just going to be wasted.
Perfect. Well, before we close out, I want to thank you personally and Asbury Automotive for the donations of the laptops that we've been able to provide to some of our college students, high schoolers, and some of the students at the 100 Robotics Alliance, because during this pandemic, technology is more critical than it's ever been. And so with partners like you all that have helped support our young people through donations like that, we truly appreciate you. And is there anything else for the good of the order that you'd like to share before we close out here?
Well, I want everybody to do very well in their businesses so they can make a lot of money and come buy a Bentley.
One day.
Absolutely.
This has been great. So thank you for your time. I'm sure we'll be talking again soon as we're working on a couple of things. We appreciate you, all that you do for the organization, all the time, talent, and resources that you share. We love you. Go Emory Eagles, and thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Kevin.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. You too.
Hello, everyone. Kevin Gooch here. Thank you for your time today. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the work of the 100 Black Men of Atlanta, Inc. We are a 34-year-old organization that focuses on mentoring and making a difference in the community. We are a volunteer-led member organization with a roster that begins with Hammer and Hank Aaron and ends with Ambassador Young. And we have a lot of legends and titans of industry in between. And the common theme amongst these men is that we all came together to lock arms and truly make a difference to impact our community through mentoring, because what they see is what they will be. We appreciate all of the support that we've received throughout the years and in 2020. But unfortunately, we've had to cancel 3 of our biggest fundraisers for the year. That would be our 100 Honors, the Celebration Bowl, and Divots and Divas. And so as an organization, we need your help. We need more help. If you want us to continue to provide the programming that we've been delivering to our young people, if you want us to continue to deliver on that promise that we've made to positively impact the community by making a difference in the lives of the young people in these communities that are often left behind, these vulnerable young people, please support our organization. You can go to our website. You can make a donation there. You can connect with our members. You can call our office, and we will be happy to have you in the fold with us, supporting us, investing in us, so that we can do the same for the young people that we serve and this community that we serve.